What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the Paranormies present the Ahnenerbe Hour. I am Johnny Monoxide, and tonight I am joined by Mr. Adam Haidt and a good friend of ours, Mr. Fash Gordon. What's happening, guys?
Shalom.
Oosh. Stereo. Shalom, sir. Good to see you. Good to have you on again. As a lot of our listeners know, Fash Gordon is also one of my co-hosts, along with Mr. Horace the Avenger, the White Rabbit, on This Week in White Genocide. Another great show that
great show
that I like to do. You know, with talking about.
Can be a little triggering, but it's you got to power through it. You got to know this stuff.
You do. We gotta talk about the White Genocide. We gotta talk about the anti-white politics. We gotta talk about all that stuff because it's happening. White Genocide is real.
And the Jews.
And of course the Jews. Of course. Hey, we got into Adam. I think that's our quickest Jew reference ever.
Phew. Okay, good.
Yeah. Now we got that out of the way. 1 minute and 48 seconds into the recording. All right, we're good. I have a feeling that tonight we're gonna the word Jew is gonna come up a couple times. But before we get into that, we're gonna do a little shilling real quick. Everybody's been bugging us about, when are the Paranormies t-shirts coming out? Well, the Paranormies t-shirts are out there. They are for sale. The link will be in the show notes. It is ineedmerch.com/paranormies. That is one word. I need merch. INEEDMERCH.com/paranormies. We have two designs. We have the Paranormies logo with the old ghost Pepe stepping out of the little circle there, and we have that sick skull design with the sunglasses. That is that is just sick. So those are our two designs for now. We will have some more, but we want to make sure that everybody was able to to get shirts and stuff and whatever. I know if you put too many of them out at once, people are like, they get confused. But check them out. I know I'll be wearing one for sure. So there's that. That's it for the shilling for the shirts. But we have this week we got a new Patreon patron, our buddy Caesar from the Traditionalist Workers Party from TWP. Caesar is one of our new patrons. Thank you, sir. And remember,
yes, thank you.
Yeah, remember Zach Bagans is still not as good as us, just so you know. It's a little thing because his wife donated to us the week before, and yeah, so now there's that. Also, I'd like to send a shout out to Cameron and the TWP Wright brothers from Ohio. Those guys have donated to me to the Johnny Monoxide Fund since I have not been able to be employed, and they helped me out in my time of need. I'd like to appreciate, tell them how much I appreciate them. Thanks, guys. And also, they have donated to the Paranormies as well in the past and continue to donate. But also, we got another donation from one Mr. Fashy Gaines. I believe you know Mr. Gaines, Adam.
No.
You don't know Fash Gaines from Facebook? No. Anyways, I'll read you the email that came with it. This is Fashy Gaines here. Just wanted to say that Johnny is one of the toppest of goys, and thank you so much for all the amazing work you do. On top of buying shirts from the I Need Merch store, I'm also sending you extra shekels so you can buy a new EMF meter to find ghosts. So yeah, keep up the good work.
Well, thank you.
And I'm ordering 10 of these purple shirts with that badass design on it. Your avid gym listener, Fashy Gaines. Thanks, bro. Appreciate it. Speaking of emails, we have a few from this week. Apparently, everybody decided to send us emails this week since I said last time we didn't have any emails. So we have, let me see where to start. We have a few. We have one about the... Okay, so from Shiro Nakatomi, this is fucking real. Prehistoric shark, a super predator, unchanged in 80 years, gestation period of 42 months. Yes, 3.5 years. That's a long time. Funny. None of this is funny. A longer gestation period would infer a more complex brain. About 400 parentheses, Carl Sagan, even pointed out that the brain-to-body mass ratio is the highest among predators. Japanese doctors say this thing eats about 61% cephalopods, so mostly squid and octopi. It's called a frill shark because that's the term for the gills that go all the way across. They stretch from one side to the other under the jaw. Don't let the random pics fool you. It's not actually bigger than Jaws. It's actually thin, serpent-like, usually 5.5 to 6 feet long. It is seen near Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and Portugal, which is now Portugal, which is kind of odd considering the rest of it's in the Pacific. They haven't been able to keep one alive in captivity, but when the Japs figure that out, we can strap lasers to its freaking head and dangle undesirables over the tank during Rahowa. Thanks, Shiro. Apparently,
dude, that's scary.
Yeah, this shark is one of the smartest animals on the face of the planet, which is funny because most sharks are not considered intelligent. They're pretty much just eating and mating machines. But this shark, based on its size and shape, could be the basis for some of the sea serpent legends. So it's possible. But they caught one in a Portuguese trawler, and they have a picture of this holding the mouth open. It's a really freaky looking mouth. Jeez. But I don't know if you guys have seen pictures of it. It's really freaking creepy. All right, we got another one from White Frog. The first episode of Paranormies I ever watched was a Skinwalker episode with Asmodor. I believe that was the Shadow People episode. But anyways, I'll listen to anything he's on. I've been behind on Paranormies for a while since Daily Showa is near daily now, and there's only so many hours. But hey, a Skinwalker episode, thought it'd be fun to check that out. When I listen to podcasts, I like to play games where the sound isn't important, like Civilization, for instance. One I just started getting into again is Viscera Cleanup Detail, where you are a janitor cleaning up the gory remains wherever some alien or monster goes on a rampage on some scientists. That game, paired with your podcast, is just sinister. There I am in a claustrophobic underwater facility, picking intestines off ceiling lights, listening to a story about a wolf that doesn't care it's being shot. Despite that there are no enemies to attack me or to interact with me, I couldn't help but feel like I was being stalked. That I was seeing something staring back at me in the freshly mopped clean of blood pipes. Too spooky for me, man. I always dream about a home in the country, nice and comfortably away from diversity, where I can see a sky full of stars and hear the nature around me. Now I feel like if I ever got it, I'd just be seeing glowing eyes in the dark. 10 out of 10 episode. Deeply unsettled for life. Right on. That was a good one.
Yeah, that's Skinwalker Ranch.
You know, if I can say something, the one that actually ghostlit me the most was Asmodor gets ghostlit, or not Asmodor, Asgardian gets ghostlit. That's one of your early episodes. That one, I was sitting in bed listening to that, and I'm like half asleep, and he was talking about where he felt like something grabbed his wrist and like dragged his hand across his like stomach or something like that. That, I swear to God, I don't know if it was because I was listening to it and I like involuntarily did it, but I like scared myself in bed. Like I felt like something grabbed my hand and pulled it, like grabbed my wrist and pulled it across my like chest. It was the weirdest thing because like right after he said that happened to me.
Wow.
That was a really good episode too.
Yeah, it was, man. I miss Asgardian. He's a good dude. But
he's in a better place. So.
He's in a better, well, not in heaven, but yeah, he's still in the United States. I don't know how much of a better place it could be in.
What's it called? Midgard. Asgard.
He's in Midgard, yes. We got another one from Rudd Whitley. Hey, I've been listening to you guys' show going on 6 months now. I drive 4 to 6 hours a day, so TRS and all the associated podcasts have been a lifesaver. I especially enjoyed your episodes on Skinwalkers and Ted Bundy. Here's some suggestions for future episodes. The Illuminati and the 13 Bloodlines, Jim Jones and his commie Christian cult, Pennsylvania Dutch folk magic, a.k.a. Brauschirai, a.k.a. Powwow, Jack Parsons. This guy's a goldmine for material. He summoned a goddess, impregnated her, and also had an occult rivalry with L. Ron Hubbard that culminated in his summoning a storm to wreck Hubbard's yacht. Keep up the great work, you guys, and keep TRS classy. Regards, Rudd Whitley. P.S. Have you ever seen the How to Summon a Skinwalker green text? I'm attaching it just in case so we can get your well-informed opinion on it. P.P.S. Here's a link to the YouTube video explaining the connection between 9/11 and Back to the Future. If nothing else, it's good for a laugh, though the connections this guy puts together are pretty impressive. Actually, I've seen the 9/11 Back to the Future thing. It's funny, but at the same time, it's like funny, like, One of those. Gives you the big think. Let's see. There's one.
Oh, yeah, that is a good one.
Yeah, you never heard that? It really makes you think. Really,
It's like
Yeah,
a brain
off the
squid
couch
gets
to watch it,
freaked
though.
out and he thinks at you.
yeah, it's the real big think. I'm sorry. What did you say, Fash?
Well, no, you have to watch it upside down from when his dad is upside down in the second one. Remember?
That's right.
Yeah. From his perspective, it's good. It's good.
Yep. And then the last email is this one's got it's in 3 different fonts. How did that happen? Okay, from Tywin Halicaster. Hi guys, just wanted to add a little something to your Skinwalker Ranch investigation. I believe I heard it on Coast to Coast or possibly one of Art Bell's later shows, Dark Matter and Midnight in the Desert, years ago. Thought it was amusing and was a little disappointed it wasn't mentioned. It contains a particular sighting of the dogman phenomenon, which has apparently been seen a few times in nearby areas. To quote a source I found online, they were driving on the paved road to get to the dirt road that leads to the ranch. So they get to the dirt road that heads right into the ranch and the gate, and there's 2 figures standing there wearing trench coats. Their backs are to the headlights in the guy's car. It's nighttime. They see that they're smoking cigarettes. These guys in the trench coats are smoking cigarettes. And the cops stop and shine a light over towards them, and the guys in the trench coats turn around towards them, and they're dogs. They have dog faces. The 2 Indians look at each other. Holy shit. They turn their back and look at these guys, and they're gone. They'd vanished. They found the cigarette butts still glowing in the dirt, but the guys in the trench coats with the dog faces were gone. Interesting. There was a lot of stuff about that Skinwalker Ranch episode that we didn't cover. Well, not a lot. We missed a few points. I mean, there's the stuff that Art Bell and his people covered. I think we went over this, that the more I listen to Art Bell, the more I feel that it's like some sort of a closed loop with a bunch of shills that just come on there all the time and shill their little stories. You know what I mean? Did we talk about this, or is this a Mandela effect?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, good.
No, you're right, Bill.
Yeah, I lost a lot of respect. I'm telling you guys, I loved Art Bell. He's one of the reasons, that I like these kind of things. Red Ice, Art Bell, Coast to Coast, and all that stuff. But then when I found how blue-pilled he is on 9/11, I mean, if Jim Fetzer is the wokest motherfucker in the conspiracy world, then Art Bell is the sleepest.
He's the slopest.
He's just the most sleep. Like he is the the shack, the shack meme. I sleep. That whole thing. He's literally he's the upper part of that shack meme.
He's just sleep.
He's just sleep. Yeah. Okay, so here's a little bit more of this email. Additionally, a topic that might not deserve its own episode, but might dovetail well with another subject is gang stalking. Clearly, the techniques of harassment and stalking to stress or frighten a target work, such as in East Germany. The problem is in the vast array of schizos, or people pretending to be such, who claim to experience the phenomenon. This actually benefits the real perpetrators, as it makes real targets seem insane and delusional, or even question their own sanity, whether it's individuals, gangs, corporations, local governments, or federal agencies doing the stalking. Interesting. Keep up the good work.
Wow, they're delusional.
Yeah. Speaking of delusion. Right.
I think Review Bra once mentioned he thought he was being gang stalked.
Really?
Yeah.
By who? Like pizza delivery guys, or like what? Like
no, just like insane fans. I mean, I could believe it. Review Guy's he's got like 500K subscribers.
No, I know he does. There's a lot of people that like his energy drink reviews, and
we should get him on the show sometime.
I would love to get Giorgiani on the show, but get it.
Oh, whoa, have we won?
Exactly. All right, so that's the emails. That's the donations. That is the shilling of the shirts. All right, so tonight's topic is another, I guess it's a conspiratorial topic, but it dovetails into a lot of other things too. But Fash is here to tell us about why the Titanic never sank.
Absolutely. The Titanic did not sink. It's a total conspiracy. And just can I make one little clarity right here? Because I was talking to our boy Marcus Leibowitz earlier, and he was a little confused. He wanted to come on with me, but when I said we were going to talk about the Titanic, he thought it was this stripper he knew back in the hood called Titanic. So there's a little... He was all surprised. He thought that she was off the pole years ago. So we're talking about the boat, not the Afro-American stripper. The
Dang, you told me that bitch was haunted?
Yeah.
Well, never mind. All right, let's talk about the Titanic. The Titanic. So the story goes that it was the largest, most exquisite, top-of-the-line luxury liner ever created, ever built. Supposed to be virtually indestructible and
unsinkable.
Yes, the Titanic was unsinkable, and yet on April 14th, it struck an iceberg, and on April 15th, 1912, it sank. 1,500 people died, and 700 people survived. That is the story that has been told to us. It struck an iceberg in the middle of the night and managed to sink, and Leonardo DiCaprio, and wait, that's the movie. But anyways, yeah. So that's
just real quick to clarify, we're not saying that a ship, like there was no ship sinking, like there was a ship that sunk, but
we are positing that it was not the Titanic.
Right.
Dum dum dum.
Yes. So go ahead, Fash. Tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, first let me just give a little background. I love a good conspiracy theory. I love a good haunting. I love a good alternative history. You know, I love all that. You know, and I think I speak for most people that get into this, where I don't believe anything is 100% true, but I also don't believe that like anything can be like really 100% disproven. So a lot of what I'll do is when I look at some conspiracy theories is I'll kind of go into them just hoping for like a good freak show, you know, like I'm going to go watch like a flat earth video or something, or, you know, or something really crazy, and just to kind of enjoy it and enjoy whoever the person's take is, or, you know.
Did you say good and flat earth in the same sentence?
for fun. I mean, for fun. I don't really believe
That's fair.
I was kind of going down that rabbit hole, right? Basically, let me explain to you what I call the Fash Gordon like spectrum of conspiracy theories. See, like on one end, I'll have something like I am like, you know, 99.9% sure that the world is not flat, right? But I've never been to space, so I'll leave a little bit, like just like a little sliver maybe of maybe that's the way it is, but highly doubtful, right? On like the other end, like you have on the other end of that, I will say that like I'm like I believe that this thing couldn't, or on the other end, it's like the exact opposite, where I'm like 99.9% you know sure that this is the way it is, and kind of stumbled over my words there. Sorry about that. A lot of caffeine, guys. So can you guys hear me? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no, you're good, man.
Okay,
you're good.
Cool. Sorry about that. And so that's kind of how I always do it. And I think you said something on the last show, Johnny, about like if somebody was sitting next to you and they flew out, like all of a sudden they flew like Superman. Even though you saw it with your own eyes, you probably wouldn't believe it. You'd think, well, maybe I'm hallucinating, or maybe, you know, this was some sort of trick somebody pulled on me, right? So that's kind of how I always operate on like that spectrum. And basically, I went into this when I first heard of this conspiracy theory, and I was first going to like watch a video on it and look into it. I went into it thinking this was just going to be a hilarious freak show of people that were just, you know, total idiots, had no idea what they were talking about. Like I actually thought like, oh yeah, like they think the boat like was parked somewhere, or, you know, something really crazy like that. And then by the time I was done with it, like I'm like, I would say at least a good 90% sure that we're going to find out in our lifetime that this is actually what went down. So, does that make sense? Or
yes.
Oh yeah,
100%. I actually, the more I read into this, the more I actually am now woke on the Titanic conspiracy. But yeah, where do you want to start?
TQ.
Yeah, I was really surprised at how much sense this makes.
Yeah,
like I had to suspend no disbelief at all. I was just like, wow, this is like really solid.
The only thing the only disbelief I had to suspend is that there was as few Jews involved as there are.
Well, you see, that would make sense because I don't think they really asserted themselves yet in North America. So if they're not the ones making all the money off of it, imagine how much money it would cost to actually bribe them all to keep their mouths shut. Like that'd be almost impossible.
This is England. This is England. This is the early 1900s in England, and we all know that the Anglos were were there. Yeah.
British.
Well, anyway, but yeah, let's get to the meat here.
Well, first, would you like to talk about the predictive programming involved in this? Any good conspiracy? There actually is, like, topographical evidence of predictive programming over a century ago. Like, this is the earliest known account of predictive programming. In 1898, a novel came out called The Wreck of the Titan, or The Futility of the Titan, and it was released by Morgan Robertson. And the book was about a gigantic ocean liner called the Titan that hit a iceberg and sank, like literally like a decade and a half before it happened. Very similar to like 9/11, where you have instances of jets flying into buildings long before the actual event took place.
Right.
So
it just makes it so much easier. It makes it easier to do the Occam's razor thing later.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
I think because of details that we'll bring up later, I don't really buy it in this case. I'm not saying it's impossible, but like are you trying to say that like this was written specifically to prime people for the story?
No, or maybe possibly, or somebody could have read it and copied it. That could have gave them the idea.
See, I would believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
like the idea that it was done like intentionally to prime people, just because like the reason that they made the swap.
I get.
Anyway, we'll get to that.
I get what you're saying. But I mean, you got to remember that. Okay, so, this is the early 1900s, and things were taking place in the United States, besides the predictive programming that you were talking about there. They were trying to enact the Federal Reserve, which is part of the story.
That's really important.
Yes. Now, pay attention to this, guys. The Federal Reserve plays a key part in this whole Titanic thing. And that, now, if you remember, the central bank in England was founded in 1864? Is that right? 1864. The Bank of 1694, not 1864. 1694, and that was when the national debt in England first came about, and that's how it went with the Federal Reserve, which was founded in 1913. That's when our national debt first started, which is now at a nice $17 trillion number. But
that was like 10 years ago, dude. Like 20 trillion by now.
Is it that high? No, I don't even. I stopped.
It's high. It's got to be higher, yeah.
Okay, I stopped counting. But okay, so this whole thing ties into the international cartel of central banksters, whatever you want to call them.
The bankers.
Yeah.
Oh God.
The bankers. We all know are an international cabal of rootless cosmopolitans, and they've installed central banks in just about every country in the world. And those banks issue their money at interest, and those banks actually control everything about those countries. So, and
these are private. These are not like the Federal Reserve is not a government institution. It's a private company.
It's as federal. It's as federal as Federal Express. Exactly. However. So the Federal Reserve. Okay, so now the Federal Reserve. They've been talking about that, getting it. I mean, there's several attempts at making a central bank in the United States. Old Hickory had stopped one back in when he was president. I believe didn't Abraham Lincoln stop a central bank system? Pretty sure Lincoln was involved in stopping a central banking thing.
Well, it was basically the turd that won't flush. They bring it back up every like 5 or 6 years till they finally get it, and then you get rid of it. So
right, and okay, so This all right. So now we just know that the Federal Reserve is part of this. Okay. So now you have this company. What's the name of the company? White Star Lines.
White Star Line.
Yeah, White Star.
White Star Lines. Now,
And
White
the
Star
shipyard,
Lines.
too. They own the shipyard.
Yep. Well, yeah, they also own the shipyard. Harlan and Wolff shipyards, which basically only built ships for White Star. Now, they were owned by a certain John Pierpont Morgan, who J.P. Morgan. You guys may have heard of him. He purchased White Star Lines, and his purchase was sanctioned by the British government, and the government put special conditions on his purchase, which will come into play later on. But so here we have J.P. Morgan, who was a huge part of the Federal Reserve Board. So there's that. And there's another tie to the Federal Reserve. They built 3 ships, which was the Olympic, the Titanic, and
Britannic.
And the Britannic. That's right. The Olympic, the Titanic, and the Britannic. And the Olympic.
These were
off the
huge undertakings. Like this was world first.
Oh, yeah, they were gigantic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they were huge, and they were the most, like I said, most top of the line, cruise ships, passenger liners of all in the history of the world at the time. So, so these were built in. Well, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Well, one of the things is like they were trying to do is make a nice way to get between like London and New York, basically, because up until then they had what were called, most of the ocean liners were called coffin ships. They were incredibly dangerous. They were very dirty, disease-ridden. Not something you really wanted to go on. And they were trying to basically make these super liners where you could go on, get a good meal. You weren't just sitting in steerage the whole time. Or if you were rich, you're just up in your private cabin the whole time. Like you actually had this. I think they may even had a pool. I know the one I went on in L.A. had a pool. The what's that big one? The Queen Mary had like an indoor pool and everything. And really beautiful.
Yeah, the new cruise ships are ridiculous. This was like the prototype for all the new great cruise ships. But yeah, in the 19th century, most of your crossings from Europe to the United States were 95% of the passengers were poor immigrants, right? The ships were super overcrowded. A lot of people died. Like you said, they were called coffin ships. It was well known that they overinsured these ships purposefully, and there was a lot of insurance scams. And so pay attention. Insurance is going to play into this as well. But yeah, so you were right. They wanted to do is they wanted to create a luxury liner to get back and forth, and so they created the Oceanic. Excuse me, the Oceanic and the Titanic.
Olympic.
The Oceanic. The Olympic. Why did I keep saying the Oceanic? Okay, the Olympic and the Titanic. The Olympic was its maiden voyage was June 14th, 1911, and it almost sank a tugboat in the New York Harbor. So, like right off the bat, it got into an accident. And then in September 1911, that's kind of interesting. There's 9/11, September 9/11, but it collided with the HMS Hawk, and it caused severe damage to the rear, to the stern of the Olympic. There's a huge hole in the back of it, above and below the waterline. There was all kinds of steel. The frames. The frame was all buckled. Thousands and thousands of rivets popped out of that. Now, rivets popping out doesn't sound like it would be all that important. But when you're talking about watertight, seals on a ship,
compartments,
rivets, and compartments, rivets popping out is a huge deal.
Now,
and there's
another
also
thing about
four decks worth of broken and bent steel beams. So they really fucked this ship up.
Yeah. Another thing too was when they were going with the HMS Hawk. What happened was, as they were entering a harbor, their like massive like displacement and the suction from the Olympics like giant propellers basically sucked in the HMS Hawk, which was like this like ironclad British warship, and it basically sucked it into it. Now, it wasn't actually the owner's fault; it was the harbor pilots. And if people that aren't haven't spent a lot of time on the water, a harbor pilot is basically, it's a little boat. We'll swim out to a big boat. They're like basically like captain gets on it and will steer it, or will basically steer it into port for them. Basically, that way they get that way they get around all the different anything that's hazardous in the area. Now, so it was the pilots, the harbor pilots' fault. But even though it was their fault, they ended up not getting their insurance payment on that. And basically, the Olympic at this point is if you ever owned a car and you keep having problems with it, and at one point your mechanic's like, listen, we can fix this, or maybe it's just time to trade up and get a new car. But that's basically where they're at here.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, it ripped a huge hole like 4 decks above and 4 decks below the water, and it bent and twisted the keel of the ship so much that it had a permanent list to the left. So like no matter what, it would drift to port no matter what. So the accident, the accident, of course, the Royal Navy has to investigate it, right? They found that the crew of the Olympic was responsible for it, which then caused the insurance company to deny the claim. Of course, your insurance company in England is Lloyd's of London. So what would have happened had all this... what should have happened, not what would have happened, what should have happened is that White Star Lines being culpable for the accident would have ended up going bankrupt. Okay? And like you said, they gave the old, you can fix it up with the, you can put a patch on it and a little duct tape and you can drive it till it dies, or you got to scrap it. So they didn't know. They said, okay, well, we'll patch it. So they patched it. They took it into dry dock. It took 7 weeks. They put a lot of horizontal steel struts to brace the keel to try to straighten the keel out. And they even borrowed the starboard prop from the Titanic.
At this point, these two boats are in the same dry dock together, and these two. Yeah. These two are basically, they look exactly the same. Like they're pretty much the same with some certain minor details that you think you can pick out. So. Yeah,
they're basically the exact same ship. So they take it in, they fix it up, they get the Olympic fixed, okay, it's seaworthy again. There's a huge steel patch on the aft end of the ship where the hole had been ripped in there. So, okay, they're going to take it out again. And now there's a third collision. The Olympic gets into a third accident, and now it lost the prop blade, and due to that prop blade, now you have, instead of having 3 blades, you only have 2, and now this thing is running, the prop is running at a weird RPMs, so it's shaking the whole ship, so you have a lot of vibration damage. They said that when they took it in to fix it, it should have only taken 4 hours to switch out or a few hours, to switch out the prop, but it took 4 days. So during the 4 days, you have your Titanic next to the Olympic. They were, photographed right next to each other a few times. What happened over that long weekend? So what the conspiracy comes in here is, did they switch the ships?
Yeah, because they would just have to switch out some nameplates, a couple of little tags, pretty much. They wouldn't have to make any structural changes at all. They just have to swap out what it said on the, on the plaques.
Well, yeah, they change out the lifeboats because the lifeboats have the different names on them.
If you see you can go online and look up ads for the Titanic where it shows the interior of the ship and people are sitting there. That's not even the Titanic. That's actually the Olympic. But they were so much alike you could use the same pictures, kind of like a Dress Right dress where they had the same stuff everywhere. So they were very similar, if not almost identical. So
yeah, the only thing that was really different about the two of them, like that's visible from the like the docks or whatever, is on the forward deck of the Olympic had an unevenly spaced 16 portholes, and the Titanic had an evenly spaced 14 portholes. So I mean that's literally and if you're just a normal human being who doesn't know anything about the blueprints or the build of the ship, you're not going to know the difference. So so
and also,
the thing is over that weekend you have the people who worked for the what do you call it, Harlan and Wolff, the shipyards. So these people were there wasn't a lot of jobs at the time, so they were basically I'd say they were either bribed or threatened to get this thing, or both. Yeah, well, to do
another thing
to get
too. That I think for younger people that we forget, is that now we have like the internet and stuff. And like this was like, people didn't have cameras on their phones or even like little cameras they could carry with them. That was something only rich people had. You didn't have a phone, let alone an internet where you could go, and complain to somebody, like you could get, so it's kind of like, you couldn't, give the story over to like, I don't know, like Cernovich or something like that to break the story that the Titanic was switched, It's like there was nowhere you could go to get that story out back then.
Oh yeah. There was the news was literally
there was no paper.
Yeah, there was no television. There was no nothing. It was the newspaper. So all they really had to do was switch out the lifeboats, the life belts that because the Titanic said Titanic, the Olympic said the Olympic. The carpets they added. There was apparently they had to add some carpet and the nameplates. Yeah. Yep, and that was it. They did it over a weekend. And
adding the carpet could have been to cover up the worn floors of the linoleum. So that would have been a way to cover up any kind of like footprints or, somebody dropped a cigarette somewhere or something like that,
Yeah, I mean, who knows why they did that. But so now you have the Titanic is ready for her maiden voyage. Now, when they did the Olympics maiden voyage, there was a big to do over it. Like they had a big procession and whatever and a lot of deal. But with the Titanic, the Olympic was open to the public. Like they gave tours of it. They you can come. People come check it out. Well, they didn't do that with the Titanic. They just basically said, Titanic's ready to go, and let's do our maiden voyage. The other thing that was weird was that when you do sea trials for a new ship, it's usually a full day, 2 days, over a weekend or whatever. But the sea trials for the Titanic were literally 2 hours.
But those are done for pretty much like that time period had like a safety board pretty much, and it was like making sure it was seaworthy. That was like the purpose of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what sea trials are for. You make sure that the ship is seaworthy. They make it do all kinds of evasive maneuvers and whatever, and to make sure that it can stop and turn and whatever. Make sure that back then it would be the boilers and all that stuff were safe. With the Titanic, there was no lifeboat test, there was no speed test, and the sea trials lasted about 2 hours. And then
no lifeboat test. That's ironic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you have and then you also have a bunch of the crew after the sea trials and whatever, and the people that were part of the Olympic crew didn't want to work for the Titanic. So they said they wouldn't sail on. Yeah. So at the time, there's a coal strike going on. And during the coal strike, the jobs are pretty scarce, right? So you're going to take as many, if there's no jobs, you take what you can get. These people wouldn't even take a job on the Titanic during the coal strike. So that was odd in and of itself.
Yeah, the coal strike plays a big role in this because also At a time when people were queuing up to get across the Atlantic, there was really not a lot of boats going back and forth because of this coal strike, kind of similar to like when they had the gas shortages back in the 70s, the gas lines and stuff like that. And what's interesting about it was they were doing really weird stuff where somebody would want to buy a ticket for like a first class cabin, like a rich couple would show up, and they would just tell them like, oh no, we're out of those. We only have steerage. So they actually left with only like half the boat full. So they actually left with less than you think they would fill the whole thing up if they're trying to make money.
Yeah, that was another little weird thing. What's that, Adam? Did you say something, Adam?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard you say something. My bad. So now you have this ship that people don't want to work on, has literally no sea trials, and
turning people away.
It's turning people away. Exactly. Let's talk about. You've got a captain. This guy, what's his name? Captain Smith, Edward Smith.
Yeah.
This guy. He's known. This guy is like a horrible. He's a terrible driver. His safety record's appalling. Like he was the captain of the Olympic. So it's 3 accidents with the Olympic. He was in an accident with ships called the Republic, the Germanic, the Coptic, and the Majestic. And the Majestic killed several of the crew. And that whole accident, the Majestic accident, was covered up too by the British government. But Captain Smith is known as the hero who went down with his ship, right? So he ends up being the hero of the story, even though he's well-known horrible driver, pilot, ship's
degenerate
pilot, captain, degenerate. Yeah. He used to drive these luxury liners, these huge liners, like they were little speedboats. Like he was a big time show off. Like he would try to. Like I said, like he was like a speedboat captain instead of a captain of a luxury liner. So you've got so now you've got there's the coal strike. You have trouble finding the crew. You have the chief officer Wild, this guy who was the second in command of the ship. In a letter to his sister, he said, "I still don't like this ship." So why would somebody say that about a ship who's never been out on its maiden voyage?
Yeah, and I can see why, like, I don't like the kind of the skeptic thing is like, oh well, is that the first letter he wrote? Maybe he's been on there for a day or two and like that sort of thing, but like the mountain of other evidence next to it is like, okay, yeah, there's something going on here.
Right. Yeah. So you've got on board, you have a guy named Bruce Ismay, who is the managing director of White Star Lines. He's the guy who's in charge of this whole deal, right? His wife, Florence Ismay, was supposed to be on board the Titanic's maiden voyage. She canceled.
Does Ismay echo by chance, or?
Ismay, I looked him up. I didn't see anything about him, but there are 3 passengers who did go. Who were on. Let's talk about the people who didn't go first. So you said the Titanic was half full, right? Well,
they're turning people away, lying to them.
Yeah, they were turning people away. First class passengers. They were only offering them second class. Would you call it steerage? Yeah,
steerage or second class. But these were people that don't like that are not used to being in second class or steerage quarters. These are people that want to be treated with the best, and they're not going to go. So
right.
Spoiled 50, brats.
50 first class passengers actually canceled, including Mr. J.P. Morgan himself. He canceled. He said that he had fallen ill, even though
right.
2 days later he was seen in France with his mistress on the beach. So somebody who was allegedly hospitalized seen in public with
You
his.
just don't want to see his wife, though, you know.
Maybe that's what it was. But he also had
Yeah.
two allegedly priceless bronze statues removed from the Titanic before it set sail, which is another interesting thing. And again, Florence Ismay, the managing director of White Star Lines, she canceled, which is interesting. But those people were not on board. But who was on board were three guys who were severely opposed to the Federal Reserve, and those guys are Benjamin Guggenheim of the.
He's a good one, though. He's a good one if he's against the reserve. So
Well,
we can defer. We can defer.
Wait,
to Echo.
no. Ash, just a second, guys. Yeah, no, don't give him credit yet. The Guggenheims are known for their silver mining, their big silver mining empire. You have Isidor Straus, who also echoes, who him and his brother founded the Macy's department store chain, and John Jake. Oh, and of course now Isidor and his wife Ida are actually the real Titanic love story. I don't know if you guys knew that. Those are they were the couple who they plagiarized and for the Titanic movie.
So wait a minute. What you saying is, Johnny, is that if this movie would have been made correctly, it would have been like Seth Rogen and Sarah Silverman?
Oh, don't say that. That's just yeah. Something like that.
Okay, Jonah Hill, and
Okay.
Sarah Silverman. There we go.
No, it's the Sarah Silverman part that gets me. All right. And then you have third is John Jacob Astor the Fourth, who his name echoes severely of the Astor family, fur traders, real estate, and he was the guy behind the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York. So these three guys are staunchly opposed to the Federal Reserve. And now you say that it's a good thing that they are opposed to the Federal Reserve, but the reason why they were opposed to it was not for any good reasons. It was for selfish reasons. They would have ended up, it would have ended up with inflation and other types of stuff that happens when you have a central bank and you have an institute issuing money. That these guys would have ended up losing their fortunes because of that. It had nothing to do with the fact that they were actually opposed to the Federal Reserve for good reasons. But yeah,
Okay.
they were
just for Jewish reasons.
for Jewish reasons. Yes, for Jewish reasons. Yeah, they were. No, they were opposed. They were opposed because
they were like Jews with high time preference.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, you got to remember
You're
that
saying some were going for the short Jew, they were going for the long Jew, is what you're saying.
yeah, they didn't want to lose their money. And what's funny? What's really funny is that after they died on the Titanic, J.P. Morgan, who was the largest shareholder in the Federal Reserve, ended up acquiring all of the business interests of Guggenheim, Strauss, and Astor.
Jeez, wow. What a coincidence.
Mm-hmm. And
Wow, he's luckier than Lucky Larry Silverstein.
he is the original Lucky Larry Silverstein. Also, let's not forget that Morgan was the largest shareholder of IMM, the International Mercantile Marine, who owned the Californian, and that's another name.
This is a really important part of the story
Yes,
here.
J.P. Morgan also owned the Californian, and and the Lusitania, and the Lusitania is that's for another episode.
Dude, are you serious?
Yes.
God dang it.
J.P. Morgan was, like I said, the official original Lucky Larry.
He was a good glam.
He was, right.
Oh my God.
So but then Morgan, much like Lucky Larry, who didn't go to breakfast on 9/11 up in the towers, he decided not to go on the Titanic. Interesting, yeah. But now speaking of the Californian, okay, the Californian was another ship who was scheduled to sail across to the United States from England as well. in the Californian.
It was like a freighter, wasn't it?
It was a freighter.
Not mistaken.
It wasn't a passenger ship. It was a freighter, but it was scheduled to hit the open seas. But despite this major coal strike, it had a full load of coal, which most ships were not allowed to do.
And it was pretty much empty.
Right. Not a single passenger. Now, this is a freighter, it was a cargo ship, and the only cargo it had were 3,000 sweaters and 3,000 blankets. That's literally nothing for a ship of that size.
It's actually what you'd have if you want to take a bunch of people out of the water and put them on your ship to dry them off and get them warmed up. So
sweaters and blankets. Interesting. That's right. No cargo.
And nothing else.
Nothing but sweaters and blankets. And the infamous Captain Lord, who was the commander of the Californian. So he turns out. It turns out that if you guys, the famous Captain Smith, who was the hero of the story, the hero went down with the ship. Captain Lord would be the bad guy, the fall guy in the situation. He's the guy who is to blame for this entire situation. We'll get to that eventually. So the Titanic left with huge fanfare and build-up, and almost all the people that were in first class were high society of America, including, again, the three main opposition of the Federal Reserve. So they take off. The Californian took off, and what's weird about the Californian is it stopped and parked itself in the ice field where the Titanic ended up. That's interesting, isn't it?
Oh yeah. It just stopped. It dropped anchor and just sat there. And the night of that the Titanic got hit by the iceberg, or that it ran into the iceberg. The captain actually slept in his uniform in his radio room instead of going to his quarters.
Yeah, Captain Lord, who was 6'2", I believe he was 6'2", and that's a tall guy for where he slept. He slept in the chart room on a love seat, a little 2-cushion love seat. And he was fully clothed. He didn't change into his PJs or nothing. So what did he know that he didn't want to, sleep in his berthing with, like a normal person? And he also said to keep the boilers ready to go, which is something that you don't do when you park a ship. You pretty much when you shut the ship down, you shut the boilers down, and he kept his crew on standby too. So that was an interesting thing. That's just weird things that like you don't normally do.
What an odd series of choices he decided to make.
Yes. So you have it's April 14th. The Titanic is steaming along into the night, and the Titanic received 6 messages from the Californian. The first 3 were actually warnings of icebergs, so the Titanic was well warned. Yeah, that there were icebergs, not nosebergs, icebergs. Yes. And
the Jewish rapper, though.
Right, iceberg. Yeah, exactly. Three of them were warnings of icebergs. 3 were personally addressed to Captain Smith from Captain Lord. So, including one with the precise coordinates of where the Californian was parked. Another, interesting decision that Captain Lord decided to do, just to give Captain Smith this info. That's pretty weird, right? Do you think, guys?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's
there being some through like an ice field. The boats do communicate, but this actually makes it even weirder that they ran into a iceberg, because boats would relay the information where these icebergs were and which way they were headed. So it wasn't like you were just steering blindly into the night. Also, massive icebergs could be seen from 6 miles away, and you're on a ship maybe going 30 miles per hour, even from the bridge, they could have easily seen these things and easily, maneuvered around them. And another thing to think about, and I know that, Johnny, you were in the Navy, right?
Yes.
People have a hard time understanding this, but the ocean is so big that if you did just randomly let a boat steer itself into the middle of the ocean, you probably wouldn't hit anything if you were out in the middle of it. There's just so much space, and there isn't. You're not going to go off a cliff, and anybody. Yeah, so it's
well,
it's
you're
really
going to fall into the hollow earth. I mean,
that could happen. But
you're eventually going to fall into the hollow earth. Yes.
But it's the ocean is huge, so even if they were just steering blindly through the ice field, they probably wouldn't have hit anything. Mm-hmm. And if they did, it's very common for ships to run aground on normal land with no give and a much harder surface and packed ice and snow, and for them to back out of it okay. So even if they would have ran into it straight on, the boat probably would have survived with some damage, but it definitely would have survived. What they did is they went all back, which is, again...
That's something. Well, hold on, that's you're skipping ahead there, bud. There was a.
Sorry.
They did do the all back, but there's a little bit more to that though. You're right. So if you went straight into an ice field with your eyes closed, as large as the ocean is, chances are you're not going to hit anything, like you said. You kind of have to try, to hit these things. And again, you can see icebergs for 3, 5, 6 miles away. And Captain Smith, of course, the ice field is plotted on these charts. These nautical charts are, made up by these quartermasters, by, these map guys and whatever. You have all the information right there. He knew where the ice field was. He knew where it was. And he actually delayed turning west for 10 miles. Like, he had the opportunity to turn away from the ice field for 10 miles. So he put the Titanic directly into the ice field. Okay? Mm-hmm. And the thing is the deal is with when you navigate a ship through an ice field, you want to go at full speed so that you can actually maneuver easier at a higher speed than you can at a lower speed, which is standard procedure. But the Californian was stopped. Why was the Californian parked in an ice field? This is like extremely odd behavior for a ship. So this guy, Captain Lord, he did a lot of weird things, like sleeping. He slept, again, he's another one. He slept in his clothes on a sofa in the, waiting. It was like he was waiting for something to happen. Like he knew something was going to happen. Mm-hmm. Interesting. But you know what? There's a whole lot more to this story. And, why don't we take a little break here and, we'll play a little song and we'll come back and we'll finish up the rest of this, we got some more. So yeah, here's Hudson Vandal with a Tactical Bowl Cut, and we'll be back. All right, everybody, we're back. This is still the Paranormies presents the Ahnenerbe Hour, and I'm still Johnny Monoxide, along with Adam Haidt and Fash Gordon. We are talking about the sinking of the Titanic. But was it really the Olympic? All right, so where do we leave off? We're in the ice field. The Californian is parked in an ice field, which is an odd behavior for a ship in an ice field. And the Captain Smith has accidentally put the ship directly into the ice field. So we have 11:35 on April 14th, 11:35 p.m. There's an iceberg sighted. So there's a bridge warning to look out in the front from the fore of the ship to look out for the iceberg. And they did what's called a port around, which is where you turn to starboard, and the rear end of the ship swings to port, which would normally take it out of the way of the thing. But for some reason, the engines ended up going full reverse, which basically guaranteed a collision. I remember you said that earlier, Fash.
Basically, what he did is, if you've ever seen what's that movie, like Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drift, he basically drifted the ship sideways into the iceberg, where anything would have been better. Going to port, going to starboard, going around it, running into it at full speed straight on, it would have been better than drifting the ship basically sideways into this iceberg. So
right. Yeah, so well, at the time, now Captain Smith is sleeping on his couch in the chart room, right? So he's not even on the bridge. Mm-hmm. This would have been First Officer Murdoch, who was in charge of steering the ship at the time. Now, you would think that someone who was a first officer of a ship of this magnitude would be a seasoned veteran and would know about, how to steer a ship properly in this type of situation. So to me, this it's too coincidental for me. This kind of screams deliberate to me.
Yep.
I mean, considering that, okay, so the turning circle of both the Titanic and the Olympic was 1,280 yards, which is, about 2/3 of a mile. The stopping distance from full ahead is about 850 yards, so it's about a half a mile, a little less than a half a mile. According to the second officer, Officer Leitler, he said the iceberg was visible for at least 2 miles. So this should have been avoided. I mean, if your hard turning radius is 1,280 yards and your full stop is 850 yards, both of which are well short of 2 miles, how did that happen? How did they screw that up?
You would have to try.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the damage control response to this also is very suspicious. So.
Yeah, the damage.
What is that?
Yeah, you want to get into that?
Well, damage control. If you haven't been on a ship before, it's basically where if you are hit with a torpedo or you're leaking, sinking, on fire, like you can't call the fire department, so you have to put it out yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's basically damage control. It's like shipboard repairs to the ship when it's under some sort of duress. After this, if I'm not mistaken, I get really bad with giving the exact numbers, but I do believe it was 45 minutes before they actually radioed for help. If I'm not mistaken, is that correct, Johnny?
I think it was. Or was it? It was roughly 45 minutes to an hour before they radioed for help. But one thing they did do, which was weird, after they hit the iceberg, they ordered the ship's engines half speed ahead for about 5 minutes.
And what they were looking for was the California.
Right. He was basically, that would be what you would do if you knew that there was another ship nearby that could help you. Otherwise, you would just stay there and
take on more water.
Yeah, take on your water and do your damage control. I mean, basically, the ship at that point was dead in the water. Or at least it should have been dead in the water. But it seems like there was, that they knew that there was a rescue ship standing by, which of course we know as the California.
If I can go into that really quick, what happened is on the horizon they saw a ship on the horizon, the Titanic or the Olympic as it is. They saw a ship on the horizon. this ship was a Canadian ship engaged in illegal whale or seal hunting. So they see the ship, and the ship, it starts shooting off flares to call its boat back, its small boats back that were hunting the seals.
Right.
And then they were basically taken off because they were basically like if like a drug runner saw your boat coming, like they're just shooting off they're just getting out of there as quick as possible. So, and that's who he was going on. That's who they were. They thought that was the California though.
Yeah. And if I recall, those flares that they were letting up, they were white rocket flares. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the Californian, I believe, saw them and didn't approach because they were like, "Oh no, Titanic has red, white, and blue flares." Yeah. Like, don't worry, it's not them yet. And the captain was really adamant. He kept asking, like, "What color are the flares? What color are the flares?"
It's almost like
he wanted to make sure it was the right ship.
It's almost like when Cheney was in the bunker and they kept asking him, "Do the orders still stand?" Weird, huh?
And also, the survivors. Some of the survivors mentioned that the captain and the crew and everyone assured everyone, like, "Oh no, don't worry, the Californians are going to rescue us. It's no big deal."
That's what the band kept playing. So.
Yeah, specifically, like, the Californian will be here. And it's like, well, how the hell did they know that the Californian was going to save them?
Right. That was
supposed to.
Yeah, that was actually one of the. I can't remember. Edith Russell was it? She said that the officers had kept telling her that the Californian was on its way. Edith Russell was the survivor that told that story. But so you mentioned Fash. You mentioned this. It's the Samson. Was the small ship.
Yeah, the Samson, yep.
Mm-hmm. It was a seal fishing boat. Yeah. Oh, God, the Samson. But, so you have, you said that the California, Captain Lord kept repeating, what color are the flares, and he was waiting for red, white, and blue flares from the Titanic. And they didn't see them, but according to the survivors, they said that there were 22 flares sent up from the Titanic. They were all red, white, and blue. And the reports from the California said they only saw 8 white flares. So,
Yep, and that was the Samson calling back its boat. Yep.
Yeah, and the reason they know that is because the captain of the Samson, later on, like a long time later on, he actually confessed to the illegal seal fishing that they were sending up the rockets to recall their rowboats back, because what they would do is the main boat would go out into like into the ice field. And they would send their little rowboats out with their guys out to the icebergs, and they would land on the icebergs and hunt the seals, and then bring them back to the main boat.
Jeez.
Yeah. So that's that's but that was illegal, and he didn't want to get in trouble, I guess. So he kept this knowledge to himself for a long time. So the other thing is. I was going to say, you also did the Titanic actually hit an iceberg, or was
coal
it
fire?
Or what? Excuse me.
Or was it the coal fire? They left port with a fire in one of their coal tenders.
Right, they did. They left. Yes, they went underway. They went underway with a controlled burn in one of their boiler rooms. But the other thing was, the witnesses said that they saw a yellow funneled steamer in the distance, going away, another ship going away. There is speculation that the Titanic never hit an iceberg, but that the possibility that an icebreaker ship actually hit the Titanic and cut it open, and that's how it sank. And the other thing is when the Californian did finally rescue the people in the lifeboats. The people in the lifeboats had reported another lifeboat drifting nearby that was not from the Titanic.
Jeez,
as if there was another ship that was nearby that may have collided with the Titanic and caused something to happen. They said the survivors also said there was a lot of ice on the deck of the ship, which is odd because the ice, where would the ice have come? You hit the iceberg was underwater, so they wouldn't have run aground on the iceberg, if you know what I mean. Wouldn't hit the part that was above water, because usually what is it, like a tenth of the iceberg is above water, the other the other 9/10 is below. Where did all this ice on the deck come from? Unless, maybe an icebreaker ship hit it and knocked a whole bunch of ice that it was covered in ice from breaking up ice, breaking up these icebergs, and who knows. According to the 4 witnesses, there was only 4 witnesses to the actual striking of the iceberg. You had your 2 lookouts. Their names were Fleet and Lee, and then you had Officer Oliver and Officer Hitchens. So there's your 4 witnesses. Of course, during the investigations, Lee refused to answer any questions. Fleet, he basically told like 3 or 4 different stories that didn't really make any sense.
And I accidentally referred to the boat as the Olympic over and over again. So.
Yeah, that's funny. That's pretty funny. And then Oliver said he didn't see anything, and Hitchens was actually as soon as they got into port with the rescues, he was shipped off to Cape Town, which is in South Africa, and became the harbor master of Cape Town. So they got rid of him.
Before any questioning yet.
Yeah. So basically now you've got all these people, thinking that, they're all going to die, obviously, because, the ship struck the iceberg and they're sinking. But, allegedly, the officers had been telling people that the Californian was on its way, which was approximately 19, which turned out to be about 19 miles away from where the Titanic was.
It was supposed to be, yeah.
Was supposed to be, right. So the lifeboats were sent out half full. And the reason for that is that I guess Captain Smith thought that since the Californian was on its way, it could send out the boats half full, and then they would send the lifeboats back for the other half. But since Captain Lord was still waiting on the colored rockets, all he saw was the white rockets. He didn't move, So Smith finally realized nobody was coming, and that was pretty much the end of that. At about 5:30 in the morning, that's when Captain Lord had actually discovered that the Titanic had sank, and the Carpathia was the ship that was reaching the spot where the lifeboats were, and was taken on the passengers that hadn't died. Most people assume that the people drowned, but they didn't. Most of them froze to death. Yeah. It only takes about 4 minutes to freeze in that kind of water, which is funny because during the inquiry, the Leitler, second officer Leitler, said that he was in the water for over an hour, which is an obvious lie because, like I just said, in that temperature water, you would have froze to death in 4 minutes. Anyways, so the Carpathia is now taking people on board.
Well, one more thing on that one. He claimed he was on top of the Titanic that was flipped over, and that a bunch of people were on top of it balancing it out, or something like that. He had some really ridiculous story.
Oh yeah, but he had a whole bunch of. He got caught a bunch of times.
Balancing what?
The Titanic was like ass up in the water, basically, like tits up in the water, and they were like on top of it, balancing on the wreckage, and like he was. He claimed he was directing the survivors to move to one side and move to the other side so it wouldn't flip again.
Yeah, yeah. You're talking about it. You're talking about a ship that had, 2,200 passengers. I mean, it probably could have held 4,000 passengers.
Really quick, let me just see.
And you're and you've got this guy directing a small group of people on the on the ship that's upside down. There's no way that small amount of weight is going to cause the ship to, list one way or the other way. That's obviously a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like Who the hell is going to believe that?
Well, nobody, because he got caught lying quite a bit. So, so now we've
really, Titanic was 883 feet, I believe.
Yeah.
The Renaissance Tower in Dallas is that big. So you're talking buildings that are like 80 stories high. 10 Hudson. I'm just looking. Bank of America Corporate Center, the biggest building in Charlotte, was slightly. It's a little smaller than how long the Titanic would have been. So this is like a skyscraper in the water, basically.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna
even all 700.
Yeah.
Even all 700 survivors aren't going to affect, the balancing or of the direction that this thing's going to float. Okay. So now you got the Carpathia taking everybody on board. Bruce Ismay, the director from White Star Lines, he survived. Mm-hmm. Surprisingly, but he was supposedly having a nervous breakdown, so that he was heavily sedated by the ship's doctors, which is weird because he, while under sedation, he seemed to have sent 3 messages to the White Star offices in New York.
Yep. And what he was doing was he was arranging for travel for whoever's like the crew members that survived to basically put them right on a boat and get them right back to England before, you think if your boat sank and all your friends die, you're not just going to get back on a boat. You're going to take a few days to kind of, decompress. Instead, he wants them right back on a boat and right back to England as quick as possible.
Yeah, but he, and of course he's doing this while being heavily sedated. And I think in 1912, your choices of sedation were opium or opium.
Or booze with opium.
Or booze, yeah, or booze with opium, right. All right, so now they get into port. They finally get these people into port in New York. You have, the crew members. Instantly, the people that were left were held against their will. Basically, they were put into some sort of a holding pen almost. They got denied access to their union representatives. They had to do, there's some paperwork that they had to sign, which they basically thought was the Official Secrets Act. Interesting how, once again, we have people signing gag orders on this kind of lifetime gag orders on this kind of a thing. It's weird, isn't it, Adam? Really?
What a coincidence.
Activates the old almonds.
I wonder why they wouldn't want them to talk about anything they saw or didn't see during the incident.
So the United States did an inquiry. The U.S. government did an inquiry into this. Basically, an investigation. Much like the 9/11 Commission and the Warren Commission. They had, but the thing is they had restrictions on things. So you had the witnesses had restrictions on what they were allowed to say. Basically, they're only allowed to answer yes or no to any of the questions. There was no elaboration allowed. And again, we get into, there's Officer Leitler. He was caught lying several times, again, about the water, being in the water for an hour, and then, the fact that the ship being upside down and all that stuff. They even brought in a couple of actual other sea captains who testified that, an iceberg this size, that an iceberg big enough to sink the Titanic would have been seen at least 5 miles away.
Yeah.
And like we said, 5 miles, when your ship can turn at 1,280 yards, that's definitely not 5 miles. It seems to be like a deliberate thing. And then another thing they wanted to know was, why was the Californian stopped, in the middle of an ice field?
Yeah.
So basically there's that. And then of course, England's going to do their inquiry. You have their inquiry was run by the British Board of Trade, who is, coincidentally enough, the same people who are in charge of lifeboat regulations. Remember we talked about the sea trials earlier and how they didn't do a lifeboat test?
Yeah.
Well, these are the people that were in charge of all that. So there was no lifeboat test done by the Board of Trade, and now the Board of Trade is basically going to investigate themselves because the deaths were caused in part by the lifeboat regulations, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things we have investigated ourselves and found ourselves guilty of no wrongdoing kind of thing. Yeah, but the thing is the guy who was in charge of it, they had another one of their in the pocket guys, Lord Mersey. He was well known.
Basically the John McCain of that era. So
yeah, exactly. If I had to compare him to anybody, it'd be he's like the insurance scam guy.
Yeah. Well, there's actually like a point in the inquiry where this guy, where one of the guys, he calls the Titanic the Olympic, and this guy, like this asshole, like corrects him. You know, instead of pushing, like, what do you mean by that? Like, oh no, you mean the Titanic?
Oh yeah,
like he corrects him when he makes mistakes. Yeah,
yeah, that would have been Harold Sanderson, the director of White Star Lines. He referred to the Titanic as the Olympic on record 12 times. Yeah, so you have this very impartial board of people, you know, investigating themselves. You have the chair of the board, who is well known as the insurance scam guy, running this thing. So basically what it comes down to, what the British investigation came down to, is that Captain Smith wasn't to blame. The lookouts weren't to blame. White Star Lines weren't to blame. And the design and the construction of the ship wasn't to blame. You know what was to blame? Captain Lord of the Californian was the person who was to blame for this whole entire thing. How?
Wow. Yeah.
The guy who like was just randomly waiting there.
Yeah, randomly.
So he would have been better off if he just like didn't help anyone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Mersey basically, like you were saying earlier, like he corrected Harold Sanderson when he kept referring to the Titanic as the Olympic, but Mersey kept steering the questioning towards Captain Lord, defaming Captain Lord, putting the blame on him. When I mean, how is the captain of the Titanic not to blame for this?
Yeah,
you know. Mersey would basically, he would shout anytime somebody would come up with some sort of opposition. He would shout it down, and he would also shut any witnesses up that were trying to elaborate past a yes or a no.
Yep.
I mean, there's things like you have the Titanic bulkheads that were not, they weren't up to the right specifications. You had the Board of Trade the Board of Trade. They signed off on the inspection. It was basically, it's just a cursory inspection. Usually they're much more thorough. And again, the sea trials for the Titanic were literally 2 hours instead of an entire, like at minimum a weekend. So
yep.
you've got a lot of things here. So you've got, obviously you have the British government involved, I mean, there has to be collusion with the British government. You've got, if White Star Lines and, the shipyard, if they went bankrupt over this, the political repercussions would have been huge. First of all, like 30,000 people would have been out of work in Belfast.
Plus the feeder industries.
Exactly. Just those two places, just White Star and Handel and Wolff. It would have been 30,000 people out of work, and you got the feeder industries, all the dependent industries. Those people would have lost their jobs. You have J.P. Morgan, who had taken over White Star Lines. Now remember I said earlier when he bought White Star Lines that the government let him do it with certain concessions. Well, the concessions were the main concession was that he agreed to a deal with the government where any ship could be requisitioned as a troop carrier. Now, which is odd. When that happened, it's almost as if these people knew that there was going to be a big war coming up and they were going to need troop carriers.
Yeah, to prevent a Holocaust.
Well, no, this was 19. This is in the early 1900s, so it would have been before any mention.
Being facetious.
Oh yes, I know. But the first, but yeah. So what would have happened if White Star Lines and the shipyard went bankrupt? Morgan could have just seized assets, and the assets would have been ships, right? And so
liquidate them.
Yeah, and he would have just taken his ships and gone home, and Britain would have been fucked without their troop carriers for World War One. So
and you got to remember too, this is a time when we think of just Britain, now we just think of the UK. This is when they had a huge empire, so they needed to bring in, troops from Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa before they turned on them. So they had people all over the world that they were going to bring in as reinforcements. So it wasn't just like. Because a lot of people are probably thinking maybe like, well, what do they need the troop carrier for, just to go across the channel to Europe? Like, no, this was where they could, bring people in all the way from Canada and, all around the world. So,
exactly. Yeah. So now here's where a little more of the Lucky Larry Silverstein stuff comes in. So the Titanic cost about $2.5 million to build. But the payout on the insurance is usually about $750,000, so you're looking at about a $1.8 million payout. However, before the ship took off, they upped the insurance to $3.2 million. So they got an insurance payout of about 1.5 times of what the ship was worth.
That's really lucky.
Really lucky.
Yep.
That's right.
And you got to think about it. If they switch the ships, they get this huge payout. They get rid of this crappy ship that they couldn't fix, and they have a brand new ship sitting, that they're taking around the world. I mean, it's a perfect scam.
Well, that ship, yeah, the Olympic eventually went on. Was it 25, 30 years of back and forth? And there's all that money from that too. So yeah. This beat up ship that they were only able to insure for like half of what it was worth. Yeah, well, that's fine because it was brand fucking.
It was 1911 to 1935. That was when they took it out of service.
Okay, so 25 years, yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So we have an insurance scam. All right. So skip ahead. Now we have Robert Ballard. Discovers the Titanic wreck in 1986, right? That was pretty interesting.
Well, really quick. Can I just make a little caveat here? Okay, if at this point, like you're thinking maybe you're on the fence and you're thinking, okay, you guys got all these coincidences, but you can maybe in your head you're being skeptical and you're explaining them all the way. Like we saved the best for last here, so the best evidence is still coming up. So. We didn't front load the evidence, so this is the best topographical evidence about the hit here. All right, so
all right, so we have. Oh, you know what we forgot? You know what we forgot to talk about is the coincidences in the in the hearings. So you have your 6 eyewitnesses. The four that survived, right? You have your first officer. We talked about Oliver, Mr. I Saw Nothing, Helmsman Hitchens. He's the guy that transferred to Cape Town, and the lookouts. They one of them wouldn't talk, and the other one gave a whole bunch of fucked up stories. Well, your other eyewitnesses was your first officer, who supposedly shot a passenger and then committed suicide. Forgot about that, and you have. The 6th officer, Officer Moody, he drowned. So you have 2 of your 6 eyewitnesses killed. Died. So the only 4 that survived were just your ordinary average, your average seamen. They weren't officers. They were just your basic seamen. So, yep, working class guys. One of them happened to get a promotion to harbor master, which is interesting, but in of itself. Okay, so now we skip to 1986. Have either of you guys seen any of the documentaries on the Titanic that they found, that with Ballard found and stuff? Do you guys watch any of that stuff?
You mean like the one with Leonardo DiCaprio?
No, that's the movie. That's the movie. That's not the But the
that
actual
wasn't a documentary.
No. You know what's funny?
Are you going to tell me that like the Boy in the Striped Pajamas wasn't a documentary?
Oh no, that was a documentary.
Okay. What about Fievel Goes West?
Oh, Fievel Mausenstein.
Mauskowitz,
whatever the hell it was. Mauskowitz. Yeah. All right. So, anyways, 1986, Robert Ballard finds the Titanic. What he finds, becomes a huge deal. People made a big deal out of it. It was all over National Geographic. It was all over the whatever. They made documentaries out of it and whatever. What people failed to notice was that it wasn't the Titanic. It was the Olympic. There's a lot of reasons why.
Well, for one, the shoring up that they did, i.e. the repairs that they added to the Olympic, you can see the repairs. There's a bunch of like different steel beams and stuff that aren't part of the original plan. Mm-hmm. There's also the paint, the undercoat of paint that was a different color that basically they painted over after. You can actually see where the different paint is from where the big hole was in it from the accident with the Hawk.
Mm-hmm. If you look at photographs, if you look at the photographs of the Titanic and the Olympic before either of them set sail, you'd see that the undercoat, the part of the ship that's mostly underwater, for the Titanic it was black, and for the Olympic it was gray. So you can actually see in some of the photographs where the paint, where the black paint has faded, or due to the conditions under the water, the black paint is gone, and you can see the gray undercoat. And yeah, mm-hmm. Like you said, not on the blueprints, you can see the longitudinal keel braces, which, remember, the Olympic had that twisted keel from its third collision, and so they added all those braces, which you can see them in these pictures underwater. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's from when it hit the Hawk. I'm sorry. Yeah. And then you have, of course, the prop. The prop that it was on record that the Olympic had one of the props from the Titanic, and the prop clearly marked 401. The Titanic's build number was 401. The Olympic's build number was 400. There's a very good picture of the prop where it clearly says 401. There's also... It was
also missing a thrust bearing. Like it was already damaged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the prop wouldn't have hit the iceberg or anything either. So that would have been... Yeah.
Right. Do
we want to get to what I think is the most convincing, piece of evidence?
There's
or do you want to keep going?
There's two. Yeah. There's pictures of the inside of Bruce Ismay's cabin, and there's a marble fireplace. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen marble. It's they have the different swirls and whatever in the pattern. No two pieces of marble are identical. But the marble fireplace in the Titanic just so happens to be identical to the marble fireplace in the Olympic, which is some weird freak of nature that was, the rock is this exactly the same in two separate pieces. So there's that. And go ahead, Fash.
Okay, this is, in my opinion, the number one. This is the best piece of evidence. The White Star Line, when they would put the name of the ship, what they would do is they would engrave it, and then they would paint the engraving. So they would engrave Titanic, Olympic, Britannica, these big, 4-foot, tall letters on the side of the ship. Both the Titanic and the Olympic, right before the Titanic set sail, they covered those up with basically, instead of one that was engraved in, they put a steel letters over the top of it. And when some of these letters fell off of what we thought was the Titanic at the bottom of the North Sea, when some of these fell off into the sediment below, and before a bunch of growth like algae and all that stuff could cover them up, there's actually pictures where you can see it's I believe it's, what was it again, M and Y.
M and P.
M and P. I'm sorry, M and P. You can see the letters M and P, as if when they put this other fake sign up over the top of it to hide the old Olympic sign, and when these Titanic ones fell off, from rust and wear over time at the bottom of the sea, you can see the actual original letters. So, like, checkmate. Like, that is like the Goyim no.
That's right. The actual lettering would say Titanic, but as it stands right now, it is spelled Titmpic. Apparently, the ship is called the Titanic.
The Titanic.
The Titanic. The Titanic.
You heard it here first. The Titanic sunk on April, 15th?
April 15th, yeah.
Yep.
R.I.P. Titanic.
Sounds like it'd be like a minnow fisher or something like that,
Yeah, and also another point of
Hello?
order here. Hello, you guys there?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I lost you. I lost you for a second. Go ahead. Point of order. There you go.
Another point of contention here is there's a photograph of the Olympic in 1929 with 14 evenly spaced portholes. And as we remember from the beginning when we talked about the difference between the sea deck portholes, is that the actual Olympic had 16 unevenly spaced portholes. This had 14, which was photographed in 1929, 14 years after, the Titanic supposedly did its tale. Also, another thing is weird. The hole from the iceberg was only approximately 6 inches wide, and it ran 60 meters down the side of the ship, but the tear went into the ship about 1.6 meters. So you're looking at about 8 feet in?
It's like a knife, yeah.
Yeah, like a knife. Almost like an icebreaker might have hit it.
You want to look good when you get crashed with a knife.
With a knife.
That's right. So yeah, there's that. So I'm not saying that it wasn't an iceberg, but it might not have been an iceberg.
Pictured you saying that with like the alien guy meme right there. Not saying it wasn't an iceberg.
Saying it wasn't an iceberg.
It wasn't an iceberg.
The Giorgio Sulico's hands, the hair standing up. Yeah.
Regardless of if it was an iceberg or not, there was plenty of other bergs to go around in this incident.
That's right. That's right. Well, I mean, this to me, it seems to be basically you have, the murder of Guggenheim, Astor, and Strauss, 3 senior officers, which were First Officer Murdoch, Chief Officer Wild, and Captain Smith. All 6 of them died on board. None of them attempted to escape. Like, that's just weird to me, right? Like, none of those 6 most important people.
Well, they knew they messed up, man.
Well, I'm just saying.
Scam didn't work.
What scam?
It came up with snake eyes.
No. What are you talking about? Scam didn't work. Yeah. No, the scam did work.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No, Guggenheim, Astor, and Strauss were murdered, I believe, on board the ship.
I thought you were talking about... You cut out for a second. I thought you were talking about the captain that didn't make it off. I was thinking that the captain probably just killed himself, yeah.
Yeah, probably. He might have been trying to assassinate, yes. However, you also have... so now you have your 3 guys, your Guggenheim, Astor, and Strauss were most likely murdered. And they sank the ship as a cover-up, which is, I mean, there's your yellow funneled steamer going the opposite direction was probably an icebreaker. Of course, and as soon as this happened, this happened in 1912. On December 23rd, 1913, the Federal Reserve was enacted.
While like half the Congress was on vacation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh yeah.
And he showed up with a stack of papers that, full 4 inches thick.
Easily 4 inches
And
thick, yeah.
Nobody had any idea what the hell it really meant.
No, not the 13 members of Congress or whatever it was that actually did that. You know, you've got. You know what else I heard? I heard that there was actually a picture of the maiden voyage of the Titanic taken from the aft end on the starboard side, where you could actually see the patch on the keel above the water. And that picture.
I have not seen that one yet. Let me see. What is it?
It's a picture of the maiden voyage of the Titanic, where you can see the patch on the keel. I don't have a picture. I just it's allegedly that picture is out there. So this to me reeks of conspiracy, cover up, and just all kinds of bad things, you know. And of course, look at who profited. Look at the amount of money that, you know, JP Morgan stood to lose a lot of money. A lot of bad things were going to happen if White Star Lines and the shipyard, if they all went under, you know, JP Morgan probably wouldn't even be a name that you would even hear, other than, yeah, JP Morgan went bankrupt, you know. But you know, he got a payoff of much higher than the ship was worth, and he ended up with being the largest shareholder of all these, you know, these companies, and with the biggest, like one of the biggest shareholders in the Federal Reserve, which was now in charge of issuance of the United States currency, which, you know, the Federal Reserve then funded World War I, which was a huge thing.
Yep, and two.
Well, yeah.
Led to World War II.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, World War I, which started in 1914, but it was planned in 1890. And if you guys know anything about the late 1800s, you have a certain group called Zionists. Adam, I believe. What was the guy's name?
Herzl.
Theodore Herzl.
Theodore Herzl, who invented Zionism, and he came out with this. Well, it's allegedly a forgery, the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, and they talked about, amongst other things, a world war.
Well, no, Theodore Herzl didn't write that. Like, he was the Jew that.
Right, I'm talking about.
Sorry, I must have misunderstood. I thought you said that Herzl wrote the protocols.
Oh no, I'm just talking about the protocols in general. He was the originator of Zionism.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Herzl was. Yeah,
but in the protocols, you've got mention of a world war. You've got mention of the Great Depression. You have mention of a lot of things that ended up coming true. You know, who is it that said whether or not they're true, they're actually true? You know,
David Duke.
Yeah, Henry Ford, I think.
Yes, it was Henry Ford in his thing, The International Jew.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
it doesn't matter if they're true, because like everything, it doesn't matter if it's a hoax, because everything in it is true.
Right.
It's like you just change the name of the people involved.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
based on a true story.
You have World War I, which was started basically because Germany needed to be taught a lesson. You know, Germany was getting too big for its britches, and you know, they were taking trade away from England. You know, and you can't have that because the international banking cartel wasn't involved. And of course, we know who the international banking cartel is and how much they echo. But yeah, well, I mean, you've got World War I basically was designed to end the way it ended, so that World War II could start the way it did. You know what I mean? They set Germany up at the end of World War I, so they would have to end up in a position to do what they did in World War II.
Yep.
And of course, who funded Nazi Germany quite a bit before World War II? Wasn't it the United States of America? Did a lot of funding of the Germans before we ended up being their mortal enemy.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
My grandpa tells me a great story of being over there when he was like just looking at like this burned up Panzer tank, and he's like reading the plate, trying to read the German, and it's like, you know, like you can kind of tell if you know English what some German words are, and it's like, you know, engine this, steel, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, like.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. But those were our mortal enemy, Adolf Hitler and the evil, evil Nazis.
And then who became our mortal enemy after? The same people we gave all more money to. So.
Yeah. It's weird. It's
the
weird.
Soviets. Oh, and then who became our enemy after that? Oh, the same fucking towelheads that we gave money to fight the Soviets. So, wonder who our next enemy is going to be.
The Chinese, who we gave all the money to, maybe? I don't know.
Ooh, yeah, we did. We give them a ton of money. That makes sense. Maybe the Saudis even. Who knows?
I don't know. Who knows? All I know.
It's not for you to decide, Goyam.
That's right. That's right. It's not for you. It's for us to decide, and for
just
you
buy war bonds and join up.
That's right. Buy war bonds, join up, and watch The Walking Dead. But
oh god.
Or whatever other shitty.
Kill Shlomo already. I mean, kill Carl already.
Yeah, whatever. It's such a circular cycle of how it happens. And it's always these same central banking cartel Jews that are behind all of it. Every single time. Well, yeah.
Yep.
Just when you thought, yeah. And the Jews, they don't have a problem killing other Jews. So, clearly, because they killed Guggenheim, Astor, and Strauss to get the Federal Reserve. Yep. You know, the monster.
They weren't playing the game right, you know?
Yep. They're not.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they'll sacrifice part of their tribe to better the whole tribe. So, so.
All right. So, just to recap, the basic rundown, the quick rundown here is the White Star built these 3 Olympic class ships: the Olympic, the Titanic, and the Britannic. The Olympic got into a whole bunch of accidents and took on so much damage that it was just not worth repairing. They were losing tons and tons of money from this because how much was invested in it. And they couldn't get insurance claims on it because the people they were involved in the accident with also happened to be the ones to decide who was going to be at fault. Mm-hmm. So they decided that, all right, we're going to just swap it out with swap out the nameplates and stuff, so everyone will think that this old busted piece of shit that we've dressed up that will barely make it onto sea is the Titanic. And then we're going to jack up the insurance on it, and we're going to set it all up so we'll have a rescue boat out there with 3,000 blankets and sweaters and all this stuff, so that we're going to go out, we're going to wreck it, the boat's going to swoop in, save everyone, we're going to look like heroes, they're going to look like heroes. Very minimal casualties. We're going to put our big enemies to our world domination plan on the boat to try and kill them. And then we get to collect the insurance money on it, and we'll actually make more money off this busted ship than we spent on it, and we'll get the Federal Reserve.
Ship. Yep. And the brand new ship they can sail away with. So, yeah.
And so that's the quick rundown.
That is it. That is definitely it.
But they fucked it up, and a lot more people died, and that was not supposed to happen. So, at least I think that originally they didn't want as many civilians dying. So, obviously, some would have to die if they're going to kill off the 3 top Jews. But
and and then by the way, that you are now consciously aware that the Titanic is basically responsible indirectly for the worst events in human history, World War I and II.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Great.
Mm-hmm. Just
horrible
event.
What a waste.
What a waste. Shitty movie, too, by the way. I don't care what anybody says.
I like Leonardo DiCaprio in that one. Or no, Johnny Depp was really good in What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
I like John. I like that was DiCaprio's best act, actually, in my opinion. That was an awesome movie. But
Gilbert
What's Eating Gilbert Grape? Yeah. But I will tell you this: there is a Titanic movie conspiracy theory that I can run down in like a minute here if you want me to.
Yeah, go ahead, do that. Do it.
everyone thinks it's about like this love story and DiCaprio and that chick. Really, it's a tale of high-level thoughterry and a chick going insane. Because you see, watch the movie and try to think of it as, what's her name, Rose or whatever, is just a crazy chick having a nervous breakdown, and it like DiCaprio's character isn't real. It's just somebody in her head. It's like an imaginary friend. So she's just like a crazy thought running around a boat with a diamond on her husband's money. It actually makes more sense if you watch it that way.
Crap. This makes as much sense as the fact
thought
that
panic.
Ralph Macchio was the bad guy in the Karate Kid. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. Or like I've always said, in the original Star Wars trilogy, the Empire did nothing wrong. So.
Well, yeah.
Well, damn.
Well, yeah, the Empire didn't do anything wrong. I don't know.
Well, a lot of pretty big red pills here.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the Paranormies.
Absolutely.
I don't know where you've been for the past 2.5 years, buddy.
I feel like have we missed something here? I'm trying to think.
No, I think we got it all. I think we got it all. I mean, it was a big insurance scam and a cover-up for 3 murders to fund the
White Genocide, basically.
Yeah,
worst things that ever happened.
Yeah, some of the worst. Oh my god! Yeah, now let's look at it like that.
If you're just getting red pilled, understand that World War I and what led up to it was literally the destruction of the West. Like that is when it began. That is when the culture got messed up because of the wars. That's when they brought in tons of drugs. It's Weimar Germany. It's every bad thing stems from that. Like if you go back in time and stop World War I, like we'd be dealing with none of the shit we're dealing with right now.
Yeah,
like that is the key event. Like a lot of people, a lot of people do this with World War II, but it's without you cannot have World War II without World War I. Mm-hmm. You can't have the Cold War. You can't have communism. Like without the Russians taking all their troops out of Russia to get to the front, there never would have been the communists never would have been able to overthrow the Tsar. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah,
and you know Israel. So yeah.
If you look at it, I mean, in the United States, it's the United States of America. In 1913, they seized the currency. 1929, they seized the economy. 1949, they seized the military-industrial complex. 1965, they seized the immigration demographics lobby, and in 1970s, they seized the culture. I mean, it's
yep.
Yeah, and it all started.
But they made one stupid mistake, and they just couldn't figure out that the internet would be a threat. And now that's like.
Yeah.
That's probably going to bring them down. Yeah.
Yep. It's Red Pill Central. Well, guys.
Goyim knowing.
That's right. Welcome to the yes. This is the time of the Goyim knowing. But yeah. So
the Goyining. So
the Goyining. Thanks, Fash. This was a good one. Thanks for
thanks.
One more thing. What are you doing for Thanksgiving? What are you eating? Like I want to know what Italians eat on Thanksgiving. I'm just curious.
Well. Seeing as how it's the day after Thanksgiving now, we had turkey stuffing and the same stuff as every other white person.
It's stuff with like ravioli, right?
Oh god!
No, we do that
good.
for Christmas. We do that for Christmas. So we're doing.
Like I can just see like Johnny, like as a little kid, he's over like at his cousin's getting ready to play a video game. He takes a cannoli in the front room. I see like a wooden spoon whack him in the back of the head. No cannolis on the couch. Like, that's what I'm seeing.
That was when I was a kid. Yeah, you guys got to remember that after I did my 23andMe, I only came back 29% Italian. I'm still 20% German, 20% British, and 20% French. So.
Well,
so it's like a sausage cannoli?
Yeah, sausage cannoli. Mine is 50% German, 50% German, 25% Slovene, and 25% potato nigger. So there we go.
There you go. And
mine came back 100% Astronautic Starian.
Yeah, you're freaking Aryan.
Did yours come with a Thetan count?
Anglo as fuck. But all right. No, I didn't get my Thetan count, but I got my midichlorians. And all right.
Are you force sensitive?
Yeah, I am force sensitive. Very, very force sensitive. All right, so
I'm just curious. What can we look forward to for the next shows? And do you ever do like a preview or anything like that, or
don't you listen?
We're keeping it a secret.
No,
I'm just asking.
No, we get. I got bitched at last week because, like they said, oh, Johnny always says it's a great topic and like da 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 da. But dude, we have a list of things and we only do one show a week. I would love to do all of these. Yeah. Actually, what I want to do is if I can get the guys on board to do more stuff, in which we're going to be doing. We've already started. We've already got a couple articles that are going to be going up on paranormies.com. And we're going to be putting more articles up. We're going to be putting more content out. We're going to have the Vault 88 stuff. There's another show podcast besides the Around the Campfire, the listener stories. We got another one putting together that I'm doing, and there's going to be more content. So don't worry, guys. We're going to have lots of stuff. But as far as subjects go,
can't we do some predictive programming?
Yeah, well, as far as subjects go, I mean, we have, the people have been bugging us for the Hollow Hoax episode. We are going to be doing it. The only problem is getting the scheduling of the guests, because some of these guests, the debunker, some of these guests are,
some of these guests, we don't even know who they are.
Yeah, some of them we don't know, but some of them are very difficult due to their schedules. So we're going to get on that right away.
Some are alcoholics, and some are possibly Mossad could cap them at any point, so...
Yeah. So there's that. That's coming. We've got some other good stuff coming. We've got some really good guests coming up in the next couple episodes. I don't know if you follow Paranormies on Twitter. It's at the Paranormies, but I gave a hint out there as to what one of our next episodes is going to be soon. Just keep tuning in, and you'll see. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Adam, you got anything you want to add here at the end, bud?
Today is the 54th anniversary of JFK's assassination. Go check out our JFK episodes.
Yep. We have the first episode last season with Musonius Rufus, and the second episode with Raiden this season. And
check out the Jim Fetzer episode. We talked a lot about JFK there.
Well, the Jim talked a lot.
Listen to that one like 3 times.
Oh, yeah.
You have to absorb that one.
You have to listen to the Jim Fetzer episode in pieces. It's kind of like watching The Greatest Story Never Told. There's a lot to digest there. So, all right.
Yeah.
Fash, you got anything in closing you want to? You got anything you want to shill your Twitter or anything or?
Oh well, I keep having new Twitters. So I'm on a 6-day ban right now for I am at the Para Spook, and it's the Johnny Monoxide parody account. It's basically, I took this like face morphing where you take two faces, and I took Johnny Monoxide's face and mixed it with Beetlejuice from the Howard Stern show. So it's pretty funny looking for the Para Spook. And that's my only one right now. Well, that, and I have this parody Mud Shark account, but you'll probably just see that one around trolling people. So.
And you're on Gab, right? Fash Gordon on Gab?
Oh yeah, Fash Gordon at Gab. And I'm thinking about getting a MySpace going. I think we could make MySpace great again. So.
Oh, my God. Yeah, no, we're not going to do MySpace. We ain't doing that. All right. So,
Friendster?
I still think we should get a GeoCities page.
I think so, too. I GeoCities.
Right.
If we can bring back GeoCities, we can bring back anything. All right, guys. For Adam and Fash, I'm Johnny. This has been the Paranormies Present the Ahnenerbe Hour. And we'll see you next week. Later. Oh, wait. We're going to do a creepypasta, too. So, yeah. Later.
Time travel makes you gay.
It was all over the papers, though no one really knew how the events unfolded. On the surface, it looked like the perfect Thanksgiving. The turkey was cooked to golden perfection, steam still rose from the freshly baked dinner rolls, and the house was filled with the scent of cinnamon and melted butter from the pumpkin pie and candied yams. Each family member sat around the table dressed in their Sunday best, ready to enjoy the feast before them. Yet this picturesque scene, which could have easily been the cover of Home and Garden magazine, was revealed to be under the surface a gruesome tableau of a family fallen. Foul play was afoot this Thanksgiving. 5 corpses sat around this untouched meal. Claude and Mildred Blackstone earned their money on the backs of the hard-working indentured servants who ran their plantation. Claude ruled the farm with an iron hand during the day, and Mildred kept the household that was strict as it was spotless. 2 ice-cold children, which consisted of bratty Cynthia and Toby, who earned a reputation for frequenting the servants' quarters at odd hours of the night, had just reached young adulthood. The children occupied themselves with their own preoccupations, as did the rest of the Blackstone household. Uncle Percival, Claude's youngest brother, was generally considered to be a good man as the priest of the local parish of Farrenville, but was not without his secrets. Claude had recently taken ill with tuberculosis, and it was clear he was not long for this world. This had left Toby and Cynthia with a conundrum. They were next of kin, and the fortune that they would stand to inherit was substantial. By the laws of the township, it was known that the entire fortune would go to Toby, being the firstborn male son. This, of course, did not sit well with Cynthia, and she soon began plotting to remove Toby from the picture. However, Despite Toby's apparent thickness, he was wise to his sister's plans and developed his own. Cynthia's vanity would be her downfall. A simple tampering with her cosmetics would be the end for her, but not before Cynthia's knowledge of her brother's sweet tooth would have him find an added ingredient to his beloved saltwater taffy. Both Blackstone children died silently in their sleep. Percival had always been jealous of Claude's success and affluence, but most of all, his wife. He'd been in love with Mildred since they were children, but it was Claude who had won her heart and they had married young. Yet, the passion had failed from their marriage years ago, and now Percival found himself making more and more house calls to the Blackstone home. He and Mildred met in the woods to confront their secret love for each other, but religion and family obligation kept them from fully reconciling their passion, even despite Mildred's discovery of Claude's liaisons with the servants. Percival would listen patiently as Mildred confessed her hate for her husband daily. Though he knew that Mildred was a woman scorned, she would never abandon her family. On the night before Thanksgiving, Percival came and met Claudia in the kitchen just as she was leaving to rendezvous with the head housekeeper. Claude's breath was stinking of whiskey, and Percival's patience was at an end. The hatred these two had for one another in this moment climaxed from a low simmer to a rolling boil, and neither could suppress it any longer. Claude swung at his brother and missed. Percival, reaching for the only thing he could find handy, drove his crucifix directly through his brother's heart. In horror of what he had done, Percival left the kitchen that Thanksgiving Eve and ran to his parish to pray. When Mildred came down for her nightly cup of tea and saw her husband dead on the floor, she quickly called for her children. When they didn't answer, she ran up to the room only to discover each child dead in their beds. Mildred screamed and wailed, crumbling to the floor in despair. However, moments later, as though nothing had happened, she rose, wiped her tears, and calmly dragged the bodies of her children one by one downstairs to the dining room. She then gathered her husband's body from the kitchen. All night long she prepared them, dressing them in their finest clothes, cleaning their wounds, and arranging them around the table. Percival spent the night praying in the church, and that next morning came to the house ready to confront his sins and beg Mildred's forgiveness. As he reached the house, he called out for Mildred, and he heard her familiar, elegant voice echo from the dining hall. "In here." Percival entered. The table was set for all of them. The lifeless bodies sat around the Thanksgiving feast. A bottle rested between 2 glasses of wine. Percival's shock and confusion left him speechless. All thoughts of his own confession to Mildred had left his mind. As he stammered to ask Mildred for an explanation, she smiled sweetly and handed him a glass of wine. "Drink," she said, "and we can all be a family again." Percival drank the wine as he was told. The poison worked quickly. Mildred, finally, with her entire family around her, took her own glass in her hand. Still with that sweet smile that had so charmed the late Percival, she drank. She never screamed as the poison ate its way through her intestines. Happy Thanksgiving, Goyam.